Well, well, well. Do I feel a strong feeling of vindication right now? Ain't that right, Luna? Don't I stand vindicated as fuck right now? So, if you've been a long-term viewer of mine, you might remember a little bit of an ancient drama that happened on my channel, in which there was this sort of kind kind of a Twitter war that I and my audience engaged in from a lot of 2019 to like 2021, I'd say, against a group of people on Twitter one can only label the label of woke scold. Now, these people are basically very, very over the top, like stereotypical lefties who get overly offended at every little thing. They use their identity as a crutch or a shield while at the same time engaging in the most abusive, hateful behavior towards others. They virtue signal nonstop, concern, troll, and engage in harassment and cancel culture to a degree that is beyond anything you could consider reasonable. I think we all know the types of people I'm talking about here. Well, I had my run-ins with that crowd on Twitter, and I still do to this day, though I feel like I've BTFO'd them enough now that they don't give me much issues anymore. However, we're dipping our toes back into it today, and I feel quite vindicated because for a while, I used to argue that if this mindset of over-fragility, of hyper-fragility, and that's what it is hyper-fragility, becomes too dominant in the left, it will extend beyond simply being intolerant of harmful rhetoric or harmful words and expanding to a hyper esoteric, over the top, ridiculous crackdown socially on things that are tangentially, barely, arguably problematic. So, this is what we're talking about today. This tweet didn't get a lot of support, thankfully, only 734 likes, but it got a whole lot of quote tweets. Some ableist words you should probably cut out of your vocabulary because they're ableist. Idiot or idiotic. Crazy. Differently abled. Well, I mean, that's okay. Dumb. Insane. Lame. Moron. Psycho. Psycho's arguably ableist. Specially abled. That's okay, ableist. Or stupid. Okay? Especially if you've these words for a long time, it'll take time to cut it out. If you do accidentally say one, just say sorry, I mean whatever non-ableist word instead. Unlearning these things takes time. We appreciate the actual effort. I'm sorry, guys, but there is no other way to describe this tweet and this mindset other than hyper-fragile. Now, I'm not actually arguing that this mindset's a sincere threat to the left. I don't want you guys to think you need to go harass this person or go tell them how it really is or anything. Don't go after this person. Let's just laugh at this person through the glass. It's like a zoo, right? You laugh at the dumb fucks through the glass, but you don't actually go through the glass and fuck with the animals, right? Listen, if this mindset were to become so strong among the left that you literally could not step out of line with this without getting socially ostracized, like legit socially ostracized, there would really be no way for left-wing pundits, left-wing debaters, left-wing political analysts, or basically lefty insert the people whose job it is to convince people they ought to be left-wing, people would not be capable of criticizing the mental state in any subtle way, nor the way through which conservatives reach their positions on a logical level. You're literally taking away the ability to, like on a social level, if you argue this is genuinely something that lefties ought to phase out of their vocabulary, taking away the ability to insult the intelligence of conservatives, because insulting one's intelligence is now by default ableist? No. It's context. Listen, something that's always really, really bugged me, and I know that people aren't going to find this genuine. Those that want to get offended by what I'm about to say here are going to look past all of the logic in it. Something that's always bothered me about the people who hyper-focus on the use of, say, the word retard when it comes to ableism, something that's always bothered me so much about that is that when you hyper-focus on that, and you hyper-fixate on that, words that sound mean, but even in their own context aren't even being used in anywhere close to an ableist context. Like when somebody says, and I quote, that video game is retarded. Is that ableist? Is there any ableist sentiment there? Genuinely, I want you to think on it. Besides any ableist subtle, bias that might have lent them to use the word in the first place, is there ableist sentiment in them calling a game the Arsler? No, they aren't literally or even implying that a video game can be in any way mentally deficient or frankly can even have any lessened mental capacity. That's not possible, nor is it even possible on a figurative level. It's literally just being used as a harsh sounding word to describe a thing that isn't stupid. It's like if, how in the schoolyard you say, this game is stupid. It's like a more mature adult sounding, more guttural sounding way of saying that to a lot of people. And I am not defending it here. I am simply making a factual statement about how the majority of people use the R slur. This is just true. I'm not even defending it. I think the R slur is harmful. I do think it is. I think that especially when streamers and content creators in the left-wing communities use it, even like I just did, it can have harmful effects. And it's why I make sure that the cases where I do use the R slur are in contexts where I'm actively calling out ableism. So let's bring it back around to the ableism I'm calling out. When people hyper-focus on these really aesthetically easy examples of ableism to call out, it feels like it distracts a lot from the more subtle forms of ableism or more institutional forms of ableism that, I'm going to be honest with you guys, matter more. Okay? Right now, access to mental health care, or even for health care that when you have a disability that's ongoing and long term, in much of the world, not just America, is very, very strenuous. Our culture heavily, 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 heavily stigmatizes people with mental disabilities, or not even mental disabilities, but with mental conditions like sociopathy, PTSD, bipolar disorder, what is it? Dissociative identity disorder. What else? Antisocial personality disorder. All of these different things have been heavily stigmatized to an extent, or even depression. All of these things have been so weirdly stigmatized in such harmful ways by pop culture and media that it's just ignored. It's just ignored and at worst memed about. And yet you see lefties on Twitter complaining about people calling a video game the R slur. I understand where the concern comes from, but whew, yeah. Not to mention, if we really want to delve into the philosophical end of things, like Breadwave just said, Breadwave in chat just brought up a good point. I was just about to get into that. If we really want to dig into the philosophical side of things, calling someone stupid is ableist. Claiming that somebody's line of mental process they use to reach a conclusion is in some way, faulty is ableist. At its core, that is ableist, objectively speaking. If I say the quartering is an idiot, that is ableist. I even said the quartering has brain damage earlier. That was ableist. And yet, nobody really took issue with it, did they? Not really. Not except the conservatives that want to, concern, troll, and virtue signal. No one really got upset about it because, well, idiot and stupid, well, besides to this particular person, don't sound as mean as the R slur does. Now, what really matters when we talk about why people use the words they use are the history behind those words, the effect they have, and the intent of said words. And I agree that we ought to phase out the R slur from most common language, I think, at least in public discussion. I think the R slur has reached a level of infamy enough that it deserves to be called a slur. It's not as bad as most slurs. Doesn't mean saying it's not as bad as the N word. It's worse than the C slur that I can't say on Twitch for white people. It's worse than that. It's somewhere in that spectrum of severity. It's not so bad that you can't say it in most spaces, but it's bad enough that you probably shouldn't say it publicly to a larger audience that could potentially feel hurt by use of that word. That's my position on use of the R slur. It's been my position since October 2020, I'd say. Roughly. Yeah, I'd say just about. But let's be real here. I think it's important that you be able to, just for the sake of basic human communication, that you are able to insult the intelligence on some level of conservatives, those that are actively making a devout effort to take away the rights of many a minority group across this glorious, lovely, flawless nation. Anyway, listen. I also want to talk about another side of this that isn't getting a lot of attention, and that's kind of the reaction to this tweet. I'm kind of playing into this, to be fair, but 8,617 quote tweets from this Twitter account with how many followers? 2,148 followers. Their take was dumb, but come on. This is clearly just an instance of a bunch of people feeling as though they have had their... I don't think most of the people that are quote tweeting this tweet have the same take as me. That, yeah, the R slur is bad, ableism is bad, we should analyze why we use certain words and when we use them and who we use them with and what context they're used in. However, I don't think it is good to just broadly say these words are banned, you are a bad person if you don't try to phase them out of your vocabulary. Like, especially since they're broadly destigmatized and culturally accepted now. How old is this person anyway? Well, considering they are a Twitch streamer with a business email, I'm going to assume older than 18. If you take anything away from this segment, I just want it to be that the types of people who go on Twitter and make broad statements that no matter what the context, this is always how you should act, usually you shouldn't listen to people that speak that way. Usually people that try to destroy all context, all nuance, and all, outstanding possibility. It's very much like non-compete. Do you remember non-compete and how he freaked out when Vosh brought up hypotheticals to him? He said, you're an idealist, these hypotheticals. It's like, I'm literally just trying to see if your thought process can, hold up to scrutiny. Like, if a single possible scenario comes along, will your thought process hold up to it? That's all it was. And yet, he freaked out, right? The same would happen, I imagine, if I had a conversation with this person, because, well, they're very devout in their positions. Someone like this doesn't believe that these words are harmful because of any, I would imagine, strong argument that they could, point to in every single circumstance in which these words could be used. I think it's probably aesthetic. It's really aesthetic. I imagine they felt like they were going to tweet that out and feel very brave and get a lot of, Twitter brownie points for it. There's a lot of twitty. I love them twitties. There's a lot of Twitter brownie points to be handed out in this space. I know that's a conservative talking point, brownie points, but there are. I'm sorry. But, lefties love to pass around the brownie points in these Twitter circles for who virtue signals the hardest. And it's real. It's true. Come on. Chat. Hypers, if you've seen it. Come on. Raise of hands. Don't be shy. Raise of hands. You've seen it. You've all seen it. Don't pretend you haven't. Show your hands. Yeah, you've seen it. Anyway, if you enjoyed this segment, please consider leaving a like, subscribe, ring the bell icon. Hell, if you didn't like the segment, comment down below and tell me exactly why you didn't. And of course, if you want to see more from me, you can subscribe and ring the bell icon so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video. And as always, you can follow my social media, link down below. That's where all the spiciest memes happen, particularly on my Twitter and in my fan Discord. And of course, if you want to support me financially so that I can continue to make content for you guys, and I won't at best be making, $8 an hour managing a Cinnabon in Omaha in black and white in 6 months, then you can also donate, subscribe, or gift a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, or Patreon. Links in the description. Thank you so much for your support, and have a good one.